Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. Today we're going to be taking a quick look at the very first Outriders post-launch developer news update that was posted today on Reddit. If you weren't already aware, they're I'm pretty sure every week they're just going to be uploading some information about updates that they're doing. Particularly this one is interesting because there is some nerfs involved and also some other changes that we're going to be delving into. I figured that I would just make a video because I know a lot of people are going to be asking me this on my Twitch, and I think a lot of you guys are going to be curious whether or not your builds are in the dirt or not. Keep in mind this video is going to be heavily filled with my opinion on things, so you have been warned. You're going to hear my quote-unquote elitist opinions on things, and I'm pretty much just going to be talking off the cuff about a lot of things, particularly when it comes to the balance changes. But however, let's just jump right into it and just talk about some of the other relevant information, and then we'll go into the nerfs, etc., how it's actually going to affect you, if you should really care, and then I'll give my opinions on it, I guess. I'm not going to go super in depth with this video, pretty much just giving my first impressions. So with all those disclaimers out of the way, let's just get right into it. So here's the post on Reddit. I'll leave a link to this down in the description. I'm not going to have my camera on for this video because I'm feeling lazy, but also I don't want to block any text. So you guys don't get to see my beautiful face, but if you would like to see that, check me out on Twitch. Anyway, so as you can see, we're not going to read absolutely everything. Pretty much, hey, we posted this, thanks for your patience, blah, 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 whatever. So there's some information, specific links about patch news, a community appreciation package, inventory wipes and restoration, rebalancing, which is the big one, multiplayer stability and connection, launch connectivity postmortem. I will leave description timestamps if the video is over 10 minutes. I'll leave description timestamps so that you can skip right to the rebalancing if that's all you care about, but quickly glancing over each and every one of them. Okay, so basically this is the first patch. There's a little bit of confusion when it comes to this. Basically, some things that they were able to update in the game, they can do through like back-end hotfixes, I guess. I'm not a server engineer or whatever. I don't understand what that really means entirely. Basically, they don't know when this patch is going to come out because this patch is for crash fixes, all this stuff that's pretty much listed right here, which we'll quickly go over. And then other stuff they're able to just hotfix into the game, such as the character nerfs. So those things are in the game, and these things are not in the game. So, once the platforms have been updated, crossplay will become viable again, so that's really cool. Stability improvements for the matchmaking service, pretty cool. Crash fixes, hopefully they do fix that because there's a lot of crashes, obviously. And then there's some other miscellaneous fixes like HUD disappearing, players not being able to respawn in multiplayer, etc. Obviously, if you want to read all of this, link in the description. But that one, not too big of a deal. I guess it's interesting that we're going to be getting crossplay back, but also just some stability information, so I guess that's pretty cool. Thanks for follow, Ape. Alright, so when it comes to the community appreciation package, I guess this is kind of cool. They're just going to thank people that have been playing before the launch window. I'm getting a lot of follows. Thanks. By pretty much just giving us some titanium and a legendary weapon. I guess that's cool, but I particularly don't really care. And then when it comes to inventory wipes and restoration, restoration is going to take place on a specific day and should be a one-time event. I guess this is happening to a good amount of people. They're getting their stuff wiped, so I think this is just giving some information regarding that. I haven't had that happen. Pretty ambiguous when they're going to be able to do this, but I guess they are saying that they are able to actually restore stuff, so that's pretty cool. And then connectivity post-mortem, TLDR, let's just read that because I don't really care about all of the tech-heavy stuff because I don't know anything about it, but obviously links are there if you want to read it. So your team worked throughout the Easter weekend and around the clock to resolve the server issues players were experiencing. We completely understand how frustrating this experience will have been, especially given the huge amount of players eagerly anticipating the launch. We had enough server scaling capacity, but our externally hosted database was seeing issues that only appeared at extreme loads. We're committed to full transparency today, just as we have been over the past year, so we won't give you the expected server demand was too much for us. We were in fact debugging a complex issue with why some metric calls were bringing down our externally hosted database. We did not face the issue during the demo launch earlier this year. Our database is used to hold on to everyone's gear, whatever. So I guess our database is freaking out. I'm not going to pretend to understand that stuff, but it seems to be remedied now. I haven't crashed, or not crashed, but I haven't had connectivity problems in a bit. Mainly, I just really hope they fix the crashing because I've been crashing a lot. Here's a big one that I'm pretty interested in, multiplayer stability and connection. When I play with other people in multiplayer, it's really bad sometimes if they're not on West Coast, and it's really laggy, so let's see what they have to say about it. Co-op and multiplayer sessions are a separate matter from solo play connectivity to the server, so pretty much independent of what we were previously talking about. Launching a multiplayer session requires multiple different partners and services. For example, matchmaking and queuing are hosted by one service partner, while the peer-to-peer relay is handled by another. Other components are hosted by other partners. This is a normal setup for multiplayer games, but is important to mention because when we attempt to track multiplayer or co-op issues, knowing exactly what issues appear at what point is vital. Don't really care about that. I guess we know that it's peer-to-peer or whatever. The upcoming patches should help alleviate crashes in multiplayer, hopefully, as well as improve stability and speed. Because of the complexity of the multiple systems involved, we will continue to improve and iterate upon these systems in order to deliver you a better multiplayer experience. In most cases, this can and has already been done via the backend. So what this is sounding like is that it's actually not going to get any better because it is too complex for them to figure out with a mix of it being peer-to-peer and stuff. That's at least my interpretation of this. So don't foresee this getting better if you're trying to connect with somebody that is on like a different server, like such as if you're connecting from your East Coast and your friend is West Coast, you try to connect to him, you're probably going to still experience lag unless you guys are on like the same server. However, I guess you won't crash nearly as often. Don't really know, but there we go. So now let's get into the big one. The big boy, rebalancing. This rebalancing work can be implemented through backend updates, doesn't require a patch, and will be run during today's maintenance window. So this is live as of right now. For some reason, they're nerfing the bounty hunt and monster hunt quest, so you can't get legendaries. I guess, who cares? Whatever. This wasn't an exploit. The only exploit was doing it with co-op. I guess they said they're not going to ban people, but I don't know, because that's separate from the people that did it in the co-op glitch, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And then they adjusted loot on specific enemies, so World Tour farming is going to be a little bit less efficient. And then we have some expedition changes, and then we'll get into the big one, bullet abilities, etc. Basically, Chem Plant, the times were adjusted to where it is longer to actually, or sorry, it is shorter to get gold, silver, or bronze. I'm kind of fine with this because the time on Chem Plant was like really easy, and I think most people have gotten to 15 with Chem Plant. This is a pretty significant nerf though, so the timer is actually going to be pretty hard. I don't think they needed to do it that much, but that's fine. And then Boomtown, I'm fine with this. They made it much easier to actually get gold. Not much easier, but 30 seconds to get gold. That's fairly generous and fine. I imagine they'll change these things in the future, but that's pretty much what they say. They say they want to avoid disproportionate discrepancies, which sounds fine, so whatever. And then they nerfed some crit multipliers, specifically on the tac rifle from 175 to 165. Pretty small change there. And then they nerfed the marksman rifle. Not sure how much I agree with this, but whatever. They nerfed from 300 to 250, whatever. And then the duration of the massacre AP buff has been reduced to 3 seconds. I actually don't even know what this is, so that's fine. Now the big thing. Let's just read all of it, because I think getting their insight is important, especially when I start talking about my opinions on things. So let's read what they say. While we fully intend to provide the overpowered feel for the best builds out there, we are also committed to making sure that there is build diversity in the top performing builds. Late in the demo lifecycle, we discovered a bug with regards to the bullet augmentation ability's damage calculation formula. While we fixed this bug, some unforeseen imbalances were unfortunately introduced, which has led to bullet-based abilities vastly outperforming other skills. The main problem with this is that such bullet-based builds require much less investment to make them top tier compared to other builds. We'll get back to this point a little bit later. To achieve this, we have made a couple adjustments to the Trickster and Technomancer classes who benefit most from their bullet abilities powers. It's uncertain as to whether these changes will prove to be too strong or too weak, so please consider that this is only the first step, as we will continue to monitor and adjust them in the future. Just like you, we hope to see more inspiring and crazy combinations of abilities and mods. So, first change, the base cooldown of Twisted Round skill has been reduced from... So, the first change is that the base cooldown of Twisted Round skill has been increased to 25 seconds, previously 16 seconds. I'll give my opinions on every single one of these later. And then the next nerf is that the Trickster's hero tree nodes, Disruptive Firepower, Sign of Power, and Outrider Executioner have had their power reduced to 35%, previously 50%. So if you were to pop a movement skill, deception skill, and a damage skill, instead of going to 150%, you would now only go to 105%. So fairly reasonable nerf, I suppose. And then we have the vulnerable status power being reduced to 15%, which was previously 25%, which this one's interesting. Then the next one is the Technomancer hero tree node damage against poison has had its power reduced to 15%, which was previously 30%. And then we have the Pyromancer Hero Tree node Trial of Ashes has been reduced to 15% extra damage to enemies against Ash. Previously was 30%. Now that we know what exactly they're doing, let me give you guys my sweaty nerd opinion. First off, the sky is not falling. This isn't going to make that big of a deal. At very most, it represents about a 20 to 30% nerf, depending on if you're playing like Trickster or Technomancer. Ultimately, though, I don't think that they should have done this. In my opinion, Technomancer is overpowered, and that is with me having Trickster, Technomancer, and Pyromancer at CT15 and having played all three of them. I do think that Technomancer is overpowered relative to the other ones. However, I don't think that they should have nerfed any of them this early on because, as you guys can probably tell, there's a huge uproar as a result of this, but also they didn't try to mitigate this fact with doing anything to incentivize you to use other builds. Their main purpose of doing this was to incentivize you to use anomaly power builds, but this change doesn't actually do that. All it does is it just makes these builds slightly underpowered and worse to feel, or worse to play. Like they even stated earlier, the main problem is that bullet builds are way too easy to create relative to anomaly power builds. They should have done this change, including some changes to anomaly power. Maybe increase the ratio that anomaly power gear gives you, whatever. I could theorycraft or like give ideas, I guess, forever, but ultimately it doesn't matter. My insight is that basically they change these things just to try to get you to not run a bullet build, but ultimately this is actually not going to have any impact other than those builds feeling worse. Something that I find particularly offensive is the vulnerable status power being reduced, because while this does nerf Technomancer, it actually nerfs the other classes such as Pyromancer and even Devastator for actually no reason at all. Problem with Technomancer is that you can have vulnerability permanently, but that's not really a problem for Pyromancer or Trickster even, or Devastator. So I don't understand why they did that. At the very most, they should have just reduced that to 20% or maybe nerfed it, particularly for Technomancer, since that seems to be what they were attempting to do there. I completely disagree with that change. The other thing that I find very offensive about this is that the implication is made that Trickster and Technomancer are in the same boat. While I do think that Trickster is probably the second most powerful, Technomancer is honestly on its own level in terms of how powerful it is, and you can see that in my Technomancer video, and you can even see that in this gameplay. Technomancer after these nerfs is still absolutely insane. You still do double the damage of every other character. You can still sit at max range. You can still apply vulnerability to everything and have additional effectiveness of it, which no other character can have. You can still freeze everything. And what's even more offensive is that Trickster actually gets nerfed more relative to how Technomancer gets nerfed. And the implication is that Trickster and Technomancer are on the same level playing field, which they just absolutely aren't. What's also offensive is that Pyromancer gets nerfed here, which I don't think needs to happen at all. Honestly, I get what they're going for, but I think they just completely missed the mark here. I think it was pretty unnecessary. If anything, I think they only should have fixed, or not fixed, but nerfed Techno, and then they should have done some AP stuff. But like I said, this isn't going to represent a massive nerf to Techno. This does feel pretty noticeable on my Trickster, and honestly it kind of sucks because, in my opinion, Trickster is a high risk, high reward playstyle. You should be able to do the most damage in the game on that character because you're forced to be in close range. You're forced to think about your cooldown usages, while with Technomancer you kind of just hold down left click and win. In this gameplay, this is after the nerf. With Technomancer, I do maybe 20-30% less damage, but I still completely roll through everything, while on my Trickster, things are just more difficult, and I even have more playtime on my Trickster. But ultimately, I don't think that they actually should have done any of these things. While I do think that Technomancer is overpowered relative to the other things, and a lot of you guys are going to disagree with me on that, that's fine. While I do think that, I also think that it's a misplay to nerf things, especially if you're going to nerf things inadvertently that didn't deserve to be nerfed. You're getting, Trickster and Pyromancer and Devastator in the crossfire just because one class was overpowered. But also, they're not even solving the problem. The main problem is that making an anomaly power build is too difficult to do. It requires too much gear, and making a bullet build will honestly just perform better. It's more consistent, and it's way easier to set up. They did, however, say that they were looking into potentially altering these changes depending on community feedback. So this video might be irrelevant. They might just completely revert all of this. I don't know. I think that this is a misplay on their end. If it were up to me, I think they should have just nerfed Technomancer by a little bit. Maybe not give them that 40% vulnerability effectiveness node. Keep the damage against poison nerf. That's fine. Barely touch Trickster and buff Pyro and buff Devastator. buff AP scaling or something like that. Maybe make the ratio 2 to 5 instead of 2 to 1 relative to firepower. Whatever. Doesn't really matter what my opinion is, but that's my thoughts. You can still play these builds and you can still do well. The best builds are still going to be the best builds. This isn't going to change the meta. So that's why I think that these changes are particularly useless, and it's pretty much just going to tilt everybody. So yeah, there's my opinions. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you don't hate me, but yeah, if you like the video, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos similar to this one, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.